The other day, I noticed a protrusion across the arc of my stomach. It was two pimples growing inside the single follicle of an ingrown hair, nestled against the soft flesh of a stretch mark. Usually, these sorts of things aren't a big deal to me. If I take off my shirt, I look like an alien mother, just layered with these embryonic ingrown hairs, each one with its own feeding sac of milky white pus. However, this was quite delicate, extremely tender. Just having my shirt rub against it would send stabbing pain across my stomach, and so I thought it was time to do something about it. You see, usually the best thing to do about a pimple is nothing at all. Just let it run its course, and eventually it'll go away. But if the pain became unbearable, like this one I was facing, the second best thing to do is to stab it with a pin. Now, the first step is you want to heat that pin up and make sure that it's nice and disinfected. Otherwise, you're just giving yourself a hypodermic shot of bacteria right into the spot where that pimple is. And if you think you have pus problems now, you just wait till it gets infected. And so I grabbed my pin and I stabbed that pimple. And it was so large, and it pulled that thin veneer of skin that formed its head so taut that I didn't even feel it go in. There was just a slight give of the tension, and then blood and pus just bloomed out of the hole. It was as if I had a tiny strawberries and cream lolly sitting on my stomach. So I wiped away the excess, and I noticed there was now just a tiny hair poking out of me. So I grabbed it and gave it a pull, and it came straight out of me without so much as a pluck or a tug. This little follicle must have just been stewing in that pool of pus with nothing tethering it to my body at all. I squeezed the hole some more and got out as much as I could. And even though I had this nice fat wad of pus now outside of me, that area was still a defined mound that was very sore, even if you touched it slightly. So I figured that below this concave meat ditch that was my stomach, there must have been a deeper subdermal reservoir of pus. So I grab my pin again and I start digging about, scraping the flesh underneath, hoping that I can hit this pile of pus before I reach some serious nerve endings. And so I scratched away inside that hole until I couldn't bring myself to dig any deeper. And alas, I realized that there was nothing further down. So I decided to pull the pin out. I grabbed a hock of my flesh and tried to bend it upwards so I could actually see what was going on there. And what I noticed is that that second pimple still had a defined head, but because it was further into the stretch mark, the flesh there was even softer, and no matter how I tried to stab it from above, it would just sink below the skin, and I couldn't get a good purchase on it. One thing I'd noticed from my previous excavation was that loose flap of skin above the first hole that used to form the head. That I could get the pin under there and lift it up, forming like a skin tent. And that from there, I thought that perhaps I can scrape towards that other pimple from the side, digging from underneath, a bit like playing Minecraft on the inside. So, lifting up that bit of skin and then scraping the pin, hopefully being able to dig a little bit further towards that other pimple, I started working my way there. But even then, the flesh was too soft and I couldn't make any considerable ground. So I decided to leave it at that. I grabbed some toilet paper, I dabbed away at the area until nothing excreted out of me any further. I put on my pajamas and I decided to just go to bed. And it was only hours later I realized what a mistake that was. I woke up later that night to a sharp tugging stinging, pinching sensation on the outside of my stomach. I went back into the bathroom and I turned the lights on to see that there was a large dark splotch on my pajama shirt where those pimples had been, with the long trickling strip down to my side from where I was laying that night. What it seemed like is that some plasma, some blood, whatever, must have been oozing out of me in my sleep, trickled down my side, and then dried out. And what woke me was the tugging of my stomach hair against this now hard, crackling splotch on my shirt. What I effectively had was a giant bandage that had formed from my own bodily fluids in my pajamas. I was now in quite a situation. It was the middle of the night. I had to get my shirt off. But if I pulled slowly, I would feel as I tugged each stomach hair out as I slowly lifted off my shirt. Or I could rip it all off at once like a bandage. But then I would have to try and muffle my screams so as to not wake my girlfriend sleeping in the bedroom. I decided to take the latter option and get the pain out of the way quickly. I grabbed either side of my pajama shirt. I yanked it off as fast as I could, doing my best to muffle my screams as that white, burning hot sensation roared across my stomach. Not only had I just waxed a section of it, but this was also in that delicate area where that pimple once was. I had a look at it again, squeezing, pressing at it, and I could feel just below the surface there was something hard. So I got the pin again, ran it under hot water, and I dug in that same spot where I had before and couldn't find anything. I could feel some resistance deeper in my stomach. There was something in there, just not willing to let go. So I dug in until I could feel it, and then around and tried to lever it out. And eventually, I saw crowning out of that second pimple hole, this black, tiny, I pulled it out of me, rolled it between my fingers. It was black and shriveled, like a seed. Looking at this and that realization, I felt this electric shiver from my head all the way down my body at the thought that I could produce something like this. And so I flicked it into the sink, and with a pink, 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 it ricocheted around and then went down the hole. I wiped it clean, making sure that nothing else would come out, and then I properly bandaged it, and I went back to bed. I didn't tell my girlfriend what had happened at all. Despite all the showers and everything that I did afterwards, that bandage held fast for 2 weeks. And when it finally came off, the whole outline of where the bandage was just brown, as if I had a birthmark or a strong tan underneath that band-aid for the whole time it was there. Eventually that too faded away, and then that section of my stomach was fine. But now, I've learnt that no matter how painful something is, I should probably leave it alone. Except, of course, I can feel something between my shoulder blades when I put my arms back like that. I think I might get my girlfriend to have a look at it for me and see if we can't sort that out.